Yeah, thanks for coming. This is our, I can't remember what, but this is where I go, But basically, this is probably like our 30th MEFA Matters. So we're going to say 30th, that sounds about right. So those of you who remember, we started doing them online through COVID, sorry to mention the C word, and I guess they've started to develop and move forward. And now, over last year, we've started to move to more of back to an in-person way of working, and also started to integrate some of our sponsors, which are brilliant guys at Conker, one of the sponsors for tonight. So thank you very much to the guys at Conker. I guess, shall we do that? We don't normally do that, but why not? So for those of you that don't know, MEFA isn't a funded organisation. We don't ask our members for anything, so it is our sponsors that kind of contribute to that and help make events like tonight possible, help boil us all in our clothes that we're in. In fact, I said I'd take this, so I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Sorry, I'm going to Snoop Dogg later, so I thought I should come. I thought I should come a little bit ready for that. So what's MEFA? So MEFA is designed to really help people from Black, Asian, minority ethnic backgrounds, which I appreciate it's like a massive catch-all, and we'll all say terms that some people like, some people don't, but I guess that's a term that we're meant to use, but I guess MEFA was born to help people from those backgrounds to really rise. It was there to help us retain talent. A lot of what we're talking about today is that rise in retention, but also is there to recruit people from other backgrounds into our industry. And I think Naren over here it was your brainchild, probably one of the original ideas you've had, Naren. And Naren was sitting around at a media week or whatever it was 4 or 5 years ago, and Naren sat there and went, where's everybody else? Where's there no one that looks like me, and what's going on? And it's just full of people that look the same. And I don't mean that with any disrespect. I guess I mean that through a lens of, if you can't look up and see people who look a bit like you, if you can't see people who have made it, who are making it, or at things that you're at, that belonging doesn't really click and you don't feel like you're really part of it. So again, MEFA is about, we also work in advertising, social literative, there's those 3 R's. So recruit, retain and help people rise, and definitely today's about that rise. I've got some notes unusually for me because it is so hot. I guess the reason we're talking about that today is we're talking about how you find the next role, and I guess Darren, your job is definitely about that, isn't it? Reaching out and helping people get that next career move, help people move up to the next level. And I guess the panel here we've brought to you today are definitely about finding out how tips and tricks, how can we change behaviours, what are the things we need to do differently, what's the organisation about. So when we go through the talk today, we're going to leave loads of time at the end for questions and Q&A, but we're also going to talk a bit about what we find going on in the industry as it stands today. We're going to talk a bit about some of the things that organisations doing on a macro level, and then we're going to try and make it quite directional in terms of what are the tangible things, because again, we've done loads of these now and you find it can become a bit, and it's all shit, and this, I swear a lot too, so apologies, but there's all this happening, say again?
I swear a lot too.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, sorry.
Keep going. No, I swear a lot too.
I thought you said I don't like that.
No,
I know you.
No, I swear a lot too.
Like
So
that,
you've broken it, so it's good.
Yeah, I won't use that C word, don't worry. So I guess today is definitely about how do we make it tangible, how do we give people tips and tricks, and how do we help people learn how they can move forward. I don't think we're going to talk about anything that's hugely like triggering or anything like that today, but we've also partnered with the people at NABS. So if any people are like, well, this happened to me in my organisation, I didn't know how to deal with it, or I feel like I'm held back, NABS have got a helpline and they can help on their website as well. And also anyone who's part of MEFA, there's mentors, there's role models, there's people you can reach out to. So I had someone reach out to me and say, this is happening. I've just made a quick call and given people some grief about that. So again, talk to us if you're feeling any of that. And for those people who are hanging around afterwards, I think Nick has ordered pizzas for 100 and everyone gets to take a pizza home tonight. She hasn't ordered for 100, sorry Nikki, but I'm in trouble again. But basically, yeah, you can ask some questions and stuff like that. So I think that's probably enough for me. I guess the only other thing I could say, we're in a bit of a weird backdrop, right? So we've come from a world where the employees probably had the power post-COVID. They went, we're not going back to the office. They said, we can demand X, Y, Z salaries. And we're kind of going through a bit of a loop where I think whether you're in tech, whether you're in traditional industries, wherever you might be, it's starting to feel a bit harder, it's starting to feel a bit crunchy. So again, we're probably moving back to a world where in some organisations, the employer now takes a bit more control. And again, I think that might come up in some of the discussions and stuff we'll talk about today. So have I missed anything? Brilliant panel team? Don't think so, not yet. I'm sure I will do as we go through. So I don't know, should we go, is it my left to right, right to left? Shall we do a bit of introductions? TJ, you go first, you start us off.
Hi, my name's Trevor Johnson. I currently work at TikTok. I've been there 3 years. I look after the global business marketing team across Europe, which is on the sales side. So we have a consumer team, which is about growing our user base. and we have the revenue team. So I work alongside the sales team to do that and articulate the TikTok for Business proposition to grow revenue. Before that, I spent 12 years at Facebook. Never worked at Meta. It was always Facebook when I was there, doing various jobs that we can talk about. And as everyone's always got a side hustle. And if we were talking about roles, I've also got a couple of advisory roles. One is I'm a non-exec director on the PFA, which is the Professional Footballers Association, which is a trade union for footballers. So I work alongside the CEO and the management team to run that. I'm also on the advisory board of Soho House, which is just over here. So working with Nick and the guys to figure out how that group can grow, but become much more diverse and much more connected to the creative industry. And finally, I'm also, not that I'm a massive fan of rugby, but I'm a mentor to the England rugby team. So rugby is a very short window. So it's about not on the pitch, it's about the stuff they do afterwards, right? So how they can have a career post-rugby. So those are the four things that I do.
A lot, basically. Sharon.
Busy man.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you fit it all on?
So hi, I'm Sharon Dillon. I'm Managing Director at Initiative. I've been there for about 9 months. And prior to that, I worked at Mindshare for 20 years. So I spent most of my life there. And actually before that, I started as a graduate at Initiative. I have to say, I'm super excited about this panel because, so when I first started in the industry at Initiative, I remember being 6 months in, and someone said to me, "Don't bother, Sharon, you're never going to get very far. You're brown and you're women." Wow. And you know, it's really important. I think it's super important for all of us to really think about actually how do we change that going forward? How do we make sure the next generation of people in the industry never have to face that? So.
I say, name and shame.
Yes, that's it. So I don't have any side panels.
I need the money, so.
Yeah. I'm also a mum and I've got 2 boys, so that keeps me very
side
busy.
hustle enough, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Sharon. Darren?
Lovely. Right. Well, I'm the first imposter here, and here to talk about diversity. But actually, my background is media agency. I spent 30 years, so you'd probably call me a veteran, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it probably would. If we could.
30 years moving around the industry on the agency side, spent 17 of them at PhD. The last 10 was as managing director and CEO, and at that point decided I would gracefully transition over to a career in talent, where I've been doing now for about 5.5 years. I was lucky enough to be introduced to Liz about 4.5 years ago, and we started Conker then. It's been the most amazing journey, and a lot of what Conker was designed to create was basically a more encouraging space, championing diversity in the broadest possible sense. Liz and I have always talked on panels about it. In fact, I went on to YouTube today, I don't know why, but I knew that I'd spoken about diversity at some point. It's actually 10 years ago. I talked about diversity for the IPA, and I would encourage you to look at it if you want to see what I look like without grey hair, basically.
Hi everyone, I'm Elaine Bremner and I'm the Chief People Officer at, I was going to say Mediacom, now Essence Mediacom. Been there for about 11 years, but 6 of those were in APAC, so I used to do a regional role out in APAC. I think for me, I feel like, you know, Mediacom have done really great things in terms of the world of DE&I, and I think we were doing it sort of before quite a lot of other agencies got on board, and so I think we've got a lot to share and a lot to learn, but I think for me it's about moving forward as an industry, so not to be in competition with each other in this space, because we've got to change the industry, not just do what's right for our agency. I don't have any side hustles, but I'm a single mum to 3 kids, so that is side hustle enough.
Yeah, wow. Right, well, thank you very much, our panel. Shall we give them a quick round of applause? May give them a welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I think, again, those people who are new, sort of this platform is meant to be one of like trust and like authenticity, and everyone feel free to ask the questions you can. I'm sure if people can't comment on something, they won't, but generally let's just have a really good chat, and again, questions as any questions you have at the very end, we'll come back to those. So, where should we start? So let's talk about the industry, barriers, what the problems, what's holding us back. And I guess when we, TJ, I'm going to come to you on this. So when we look at the all-in survey, so did everyone fill in the all-in survey last week? Brilliant, well done. So when we look at the figures from 2 years ago, it's really patently obvious to see that there are less people that look like some of us in this room that are getting into the right roles, that are making it, and that if they do, they're not staying there and there's some churn. So what do you think is the kind of, if you want to call it institutionalised, What are those like foundational issues that are making that the case?
People focused on the numbers rather than the culture and the environment, right? So getting people through the door is probably the easy bit. And actually, they probably hired at a very junior level just to boost those diversity numbers. But you need to change the culture, and thinking about the industry is probably the wrong thing. You need to think about the company first, because if you think about the industry, you're trying to boil the ocean. But if you can make things in your company that changes the culture, that allows people in our community or people that are different to thrive and survive, that's where there's been no focus, right? The focus has been on diversity, and I know diversity and inclusion, but it's the culture. So for instance, I'll get an example of, we reimburse people that are, if they're coming in for an interview and they're a junior level, we reimburse their travel, right? Or I've had people who have mental health issues in my team, and we've been very good at ensuring that if they are the best they are, then they're the best they are at work. So you need to embrace that and facilitate that, and make sure that everyone in the team understands that people need the time and space to go off and be better, to come back better. Particularly post-COVID. And the meme we always talk about is like, we don't do Thursday drinks. We will do something more constructive, because there are people that just don't want to go out for a drink. The story I tell my friends is that as a black person, I can't just walk into any pub in London, because you feel it's not something that's part of your culture. When you've grown up as a kid, or when you're 18, you feel conscious about going into pubs, right? Particularly if they're outside of London. So it's just not part of the culture, and it's part of the industry. But if as teams, if you can create things and moments for people to come together, and you can showcase people outside of those traditional things, that means you're starting to create environments where people can thrive. The final thing is, everyone knows what code switching is, right? It's and it's still the pressure.
Tell us what it is.
So code switching is, I don't do it anymore, but code switching is, if say you're a black person, you try to adapt the way that you talk and the image you portray to the dominant culture rather than being yourself. So you may change your accent a bit. You may not be as transparent about what you eat, or you may not talk about what you've done at the weekend, or what your life at home, because you want to be more assimilated to the dominant culture. So you're not being yourself. That means you have a pressure all the time going into work to try and make sure that you are thinking that you are accustomed to the current environment. Whereas being open and transparent and being yourself, and allowing people to have those discussions and not have to code switch, takes the pressure off. But it also means that people are able to be themselves and thrive and survive. Because I see loads of times that in previous jobs that people come in and they're completely different, and they hold themselves back, which means they don't progress. Right? And I don't do that anymore. In fact, the game I've played for the last 15 years is, because I know I'm the only black guy in the room, I play to that. I know that it's my strength. So I'm authentic, because I know that I've not got the confidence to do that, but I know that that's a way that I can get noticed and move on. Whereas I've seen people not do that, right? So that's why it's the focus on culture and individual company, not at diversity at industry.
And I think, sorry, go on, Sarah.
No, I think it's so important to ensure that people are being themselves. And I think for so many years, people have, I felt it, you felt like you have to be someone else in order to progress. And I think if that's the case, you're never really going to progress, because being someone else day in, day out is really, really difficult. So it's really important, I think, for all companies to think, how do we get the best out of people? How do we make people feel comfortable in their own skin? And how do we celebrate everyone's individual superpower? Because actually, that's what creates great teams. It creates, it creates a great working environment. And having everyone, like, if we're looking around and we've just got the same people around us, that doesn't create any diversity of thought. No. So I think it's really important for companies to make sure we're celebrating individuals.
That difference and that individuality.
Yeah, exactly. And we're, kind of encouraging people to be themselves.
And thank you for that. And I'm just thinking, Sharon, like both of your agencies are much bigger than ours. We're just under 300 people. But I guess when the guys talk about belonging, I guess, Elaine, from your perspective, if you get that belonging bit right, can you reduce the churn? Can you keep people and help them thrive And is that the kind of, would you say that's the secret? Is it more complicated than that?
No, I mean, it is really complicated because you've got everything to do with intersectionality to think about as well. So it's a complicated situation. But I think it's about, you're right, it's not just about diversity, it's about the inclusion and the belonging. So how do you create community spaces for people to come together and feel that they've got people that they can relate to and sort of work with? We do a lot around that, so we sort of intentionally put things in place for people, like I said, to sort of come together and find their tribe, find their community group. But I also think that there's a massive responsibility on the business to ensure that we're educating people who are not from minority groups in allyship and microaggressions and understanding the sort of whole society that we live in. So we've done a thing at MediaCom where we've trained about 250 of our leaders. And it was quite full on. It was like a 4-day program with a company called Fearless Futures, and it was all around the systems of oppression. So it was going much deeper than unconscious bias. It's really understanding where oppression comes from. And then all of those leaders, we put it on them to think about what they can do in terms of changing the system. So, you know, is the promotion system fair? Is the recruitment system fair? So that we're really drilling down beyond just the experience and actually changing the systemic things that actually cause some of the inequity in the first place.
And this is probably like a really deep, well, I don't know, everyone can be the judge of it, but probably deeper than advertising. But something I observe is that people who come to our organisation, like, are we more responsible as leaders to train and educate people then? Is that, because I think previously you'd say, I'm going off topic a bit, but previously, okay, someone comes to you and you're going to help them become the best ever PPC planner and buyer, if that's what you call it, or the best ever strategist or whatever it might be. Whereas now I feel like as a positive organisation, you've got to teach them that, you know, it feels like there's a lot more to kind of help them grow. Is that our responsibility as employers, would you say? I don't know, Elaine or Sharon, have you got a view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is our responsibility because we have got to the thing is, it's about creating equity. So, you know, if you think about, I don't know, I always use the analogy, if you've got, you know, a black man is on his way to work versus a white man. By the time the black man has got to work, he has suffered so many microaggressions that they're not in an equal place. So how can you say that there's any equality in terms of the performance of the job because they're not starting from the same place? And so I think it's on us to train our people in not minority groups to understand that, so that you really understand the lived experiences. You can never you can empathise, you can't have that experience obviously, but you need to understand it so that you can actually ensure that you're trying to get people to start from the same place.
Yeah. And Darren, when it comes to what you do, I guess your business, I guess, is at the start of many of these conversations, right? So people come to you going, find me X, find me Y, and how have those asks and conversations and briefs, and how have they changed, and how do you help people navigate through that?
Do you know, it's I was looking through the stats earlier. I'm going to use this.
You're going to use this stat?
I'm going in.
When you're
I'm going in.
Stat, he's using it.
Exactly. So, well, look, the IPA numbers suggest, right, that a third of the workforce in advertising are non-white, right, at the junior end, and a quarter overall. But when you get to the higher end, it's 11%, right? So we've got a massive problem in this industry because for some reason people aren't making it through. So I think the pipeline is there, so there's no excuse now, but there seems to be a problem with getting people over the line and into these higher roles. And I think, you know, it's such a complex area, as you say. There are so many different things to unravel about it. But what our role to play here is to turn a mirror into the organisations and to ask those questions. So, you know, I do think we're at a pivotal point now where companies are coming to us saying, we recognise we've got a problem, which is great, and can you then go out and find someone that doesn't look like the rest of us, which is amazing. And the first thing we'll say to them is, are you doing this as a novelty, right? Is this tokenism, or are you genuinely interested? Going back to Trevor's point, it's a cultural shift that has to happen, because if a cultural shift happens, then you don't have to worry about my next hire has to be someone that doesn't look like us, because you'll have people ready to move into those positions. So I do think the market is in a process of change. We laugh because 4 years ago, Liz and I had 100 meetings in the first couple of months, just seeing everyone that we knew. And out of those 100 meetings, I think there were 3 companies that mentioned anything about diversity, right? 3. And now I think you could almost flip it on its head, right? It's definitely becoming a thing, But the problem that we have to address is companies doing it for the right reason and not just doing it for tokenism.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think that's so important, because also talking as kind of a woman of colour, it's really important to know that you've got a job because you are the best person for that job. Yeah. And I think, it's really important that we, that we look at, bringing more, ensure there's diversity across the board, but also that we bring the right talent in the job, because actually what you don't want to do is kind of set someone up to fail as well. Yeah. So I think it's really, really challenging.
TJ, do you want to talk to that?
Sorry.
Yeah, I think when you're, so we don't hire for diversity, we don't look at that. We have a diverse slate of people when they come through the door, but the thing we look at is people with different backgrounds, right? If their CV looks different. So for instance, the job I do, if you looked at my CV 3 years ago, the job I do now, I'm wholly unqualified for it. There's not a single thing on my CV that says I'm not a marketer. I've never done marketing before, ever. And now I run a big marketing team at TikTok. Because it was based on experiences that could add value to the company where it is at that moment in time, as opposed to a specific job. We need this person that ticks all these things, and by the way, let's make sure we have a few black people in it and whatever. That's a bit later. We want people that can bring something new and unique to a business and grow very, very quickly. And if it means that their CVs look completely different to what we traditionally have recruited before, then we do that. And it's great because we've got, if you look at our teams now, they are diverse across everything, but it's because we looked at the people and the skills that are outside of what you need for the job. It's what we value in a company that is growing very quickly, and what we will need rather than what we need right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this whole thing is around not diversity. It's about ripping up the entire way that you process someone and recruit someone, and really understand the information you're getting, not from their CV, but from their application, and then understanding how that adds value to your organisation that was growing very, very quickly. And that means the stuff you talked about goes completely out the window, because we are getting just loads of different unique people. It also means you have to be very strict on the recruiting process and the assessment process, and we have to make sure that we use our probation periods very well and stuff like that. But it's the risk we take, and yes, we churn through a few people, but our organisation that's great, we move very, very quickly, and we've got really diverse teams within there.
I was going to say the quickness is interesting, because it sounds like you're going to have to put more control in, you're going to have to take longer, but you're saying because you're getting a more diverse bunch of people in who are more suitable to do the task, not that look good on paper.
If we're talking about cultural change, it has to be that.
Yeah.
It can't still be the stuff that is happening, that's happened for the last 5, 10, 15, 50 years. It has to be uncomfortable. It has to completely rip up the whole thing. Otherwise, we're just recruiting people based on diversity. And let's have a bit more women in the pipe. Let's have a bit more black people. It's like, no, it has to be completely different. So they're automatically there. And you're assessing people on different things.
But what you're describing is an environment of risk, right?
Yes.
Because you're in an organisation that is growing, that is doing unbelievably well. Most organisations aren't like that. And the risk appetite just isn't there, and we wish it was, because we're constantly.
But it has to be if you want to deliver against your diverse objectives. Otherwise, you're hiring the same people.
I think we sort of do that a little bit at the junior levels, but no way at the more senior levels. And you get, it's the challenge, isn't it? Because you've got to get somebody in front of the client, and the client's not prepared to wait, and they want somebody who's got experience, can get the ground running straight away. So it's a complete mind shift change. And I see it all the time, sort of saying to people, we need to bring people in from outside of the industry if we're ever going to make a change, because it's not just about ethnicity and sexuality and gender, it's about diversity of thought and different thinking, which you only get if you bring people in from outside the industry, and to your point, then the diversity will follow. But it's a massive challenge when I've got, I don't know, the CMO of Sky saying I need someone in the business now. So
it's the balance.
That's the challenge.
But you're right, it's going. Sorry.
To your point earlier, it's just, we have to move away from agencies to industry, and actually that's also taking clients on the same journey, because if we want things to change, then clients need to buy into that as well and accept a degree of risk, which is challenging.
And look, I don't work in new business, but I know any sort of new business that comes in, it's always what's the diversity of the pitch team, what's your approach to D&I. So clients, it's important to clients as well, because their businesses and their people and their shareholders expect it, but It is, and that's to your point, Trevor. But I get what you're saying about it. You have to focus on the company in terms of culture, but I do think as an industry we've got to come together and really push for change together.
So it feels like, I'm not going to summarise perfectly well, but it sounds like we've got a bit of an issue where we're bringing in, it's easier to bring in a more diverse pool of people at the junior level. I think we've got a problem with people churning at that level because we've talked about belonging a bit. Those people, you know, they don't. If someone goes, let's go down to a pub on Thursday night, they're like, well, that's not for me. I'm not being included. So it feels like there's an issue there that needs solving. And then it definitely sounds like, not necessarily talking to any organisations here, but there's an issue where when you're looking to bring more senior hires in, if you're only looking for those people that look like they can fit the job on paper in this industry, there's a very small amount of people that are out there that can do that now. So therefore we need to look a bit further outside of that.
Well, yeah, the risks.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, as you do burn through more people. There's a business change there. You want to be, because you want to make sure your hires are the right hires, so you don't have to go, particularly at that senior level, because you pay them a lot of money and all that sort of stuff. But at some point, you have to be a little bit more flex. Otherwise, we're not going to change anything.
But I agree with that. It's also, you know, one of the things we do is if you can afford to hire someone on 24 grand who lives in the middle of the M25, they're probably living in, their parents are probably living in a middle class house. They're probably you're not going to get that diversity that some of the guys are talking about. So Darren, so when you start to profile people, or, you know, pull together your lists of people and your candidates and all of that sort of stuff, how do you go about getting that to that list to make sure that it's truly diverse?
Two things that I would say. The first is that we happen to have an excellent researcher, right? And because diversity is really important to us as an organisation, she'll start with a diverse list of people. So we don't start with a list of people and then look at it and go, it doesn't look, you know, like it's matching the population. We'll start with diversity because we want to champion that. We want to push that forward. I think the other thing that we managed to do is to build a profiling tool, which I know some of you here have done the Conker Inside. Can I just have a little show of hands? I think maybe about half of you, have done the Conker Inside, because actually what that does really well is it shows a client that they haven't got diversity in their organisation, and it may not be skin colour, but it shows the importance of having a diverse workforce. So before we start any of our roles, we get a client to undertake that for their entire leadership team. And you know, the dynamics are around introverts and extroverts. It's around empowering versus commanding. It's about practical versus visionary, and it's about harmonising versus agitators. So you've got these 4 different dynamics, and it very quickly at a snapshot will show you where your leadership team are. And I can tell you 9 times out of 10, they've all hired exactly the same people as them, right? So just a snapshot, you go, you haven't got any diversity here, and then it opens up more conversations around what's needed. Well, I would say, having done the analysis on you guys, because I have, is that introversion and extroversion is not really a thing. It was quite flat. The 2 things that stood out, one is this crowd are a lot more practical, right? They get shit done more than our entire database. And the other thing that really stood out is there's more agitators here, which is really lovely to see, because as Liam knows, we're at a time of inflection, which is there's so much disruption and change going on. You really want people to be asking the questions and challenging. So it's really nice to see there's a lot of agitators out there.
Thanks, Darren. And then Elaine, I think that understanding of the sort of candidates you get into, before you're looking at what you look like, where you're from, whether you're female, male, whether you're enabled or disabled, I guess that will start to get to you to different pools of people. I guess I wonder whether it's at WPP or not, Elaine, is there stuff that you do around we're going to exclude certain groups that we're over quoted, you know? Tell us how you go about it then, because otherwise, how do you avoid getting to, there's 10 candidates, there's 5 of them are from a different background, how do you avoid not hiring the other 5?
Look, I think you've got to, and Trevor, you disagree, but I think for us, we do really push to have sort of diverse shortlists, but you've still got to hire the person that's the best person to do the job. So, I don't think you can exclude things. We do have targets, which are different to quotas, obviously, and we have targets at every level, because you can't have just one target across the organisation, because we'd be doing okay. It needs to be at the levels that you need to focus on. So we have targets, that's against sort of every department, and we benchmark ourselves against the city that we're in. So if we're in London, we'll look at the census information for London, and we want our workforce to be made up in the same way that London's made up, so across everything. So we do have targets, but you know, you can't actively exclude people to get what you need to do. I mean, the gender pay gap's about to come out, and often you'll see that the reason why there's a big pay gap is A, there's more men at the top, but there's often more women at the bottom.
Yeah.
So I've got, when I look at my data, in one of the areas, there's like 35% men at the bottom compared to women. Now, I could change my pay gap by hiring loads of men at the bottom, but that's not the right approach. So I just think quotas is the wrong way to look at it. And I think, to your point, you don't want to be hired just because of a tick in a box. You need to be the best person, otherwise you're going to feel that you're not the right person for that job.
Yeah, and I think it's really challenging because you want to make it an inclusive environment for everyone. So no group should feel like they're being excluded.
Yeah.
So I think it's our job to really think about how do we make sure everyone has a sense of belonging in terms of where they,
But you've got to ask people, you've got to have the data right.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Having the data is so important, and I think that's a real challenge in the industry.
Just on belonging doesn't mean, from our perspective, belonging doesn't mean that the whole organisation, that you feel part of that, but it's where you have a space. So, so our Black Hat ERG is a really strong ERG, and it's probably to an extreme, right? It's a very proud, very black ERG. But people have that belonging there, and even if it's missing elsewhere, it's so strong and powerful. They have a community there, and we give them money to invest. And we Black History Month, we have a massive concert. We had Heady One and Gigs come and do some stuff, right? And there was comments that why are we doing this from other markets? But it's because they had a really powerful, strong communities, a really powerful pride community. We put loads of money into that. Very powerful women's community, so that within their communities they have belonging there. It puts less pressure on having to force belonging elsewhere.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
And I think it's about having like a safe space where you can go to a group of people and who are your allies and who can pick you up when you're down, and and give you advice and tips, and people that are always there for you. So yeah completely.
So uncomfortable statement. So if 44% or whatever, you guys are better than the numbers than I am, is
Have you got
Black
it on your-
Asian minority
Yeah.
population of London, which I think it is, why shouldn't all our companies have 44% people from those backgrounds?
Yeah.
But we're miles away, right? So Seven Stars, I think we're ahead of many others. As like you said, the work that you guys are doing is awesome, but 19% is still half of where it should be, less than half. So my problem when we say, and like I don't always practice what I preach, so when I think about some of the people that we hire, but maybe it's uncomfortable, so we have to make decisions where we don't hire people that look like the groups we've already got. Yeah. Despite the fact, and then I guess the tension comes when you go, but we can't set those people up to fail because they might not be able to do that job yet. Yeah. So it's like, how do you untangle that?
People say, I mean, I think you've said it before, and you said it's not a pipeline issue. It is a pipeline issue because people don't.
It has to be, doesn't it?
People don't look at the advertising industry and know and think it exists. That's why we have a lot of companies. That's Ideas Foundation, which is about going into marginalised schools, and the first conversation you have with them, you see that billboard over there, that someone created that, like, what? Yeah. Or you see the ads at TikTok. There are ads on TikTok. It's like, yeah, there's people in that.
Yeah.
So there is, I think, within certain communities, there is a pipeline issue because they just don't see it. They just don't see our industry. When they see our industry, they don't see it for them, right? Yeah. It's just not so there is a pipeline issue.
But the bigger issue is that when they come into the organisations, they're not seeing people like them at the top.
And then once they're in, then there's no, they're not optimised for their progress.
Yeah. I've talked about this before for people who've had to listen to me before, but I think if our starting salary for grads is 23 grand or something like that, who's been here before? The starting salary for grad at Iceland supermarket is 44 grand. 44 grand.
Wow.
Now we hire 25, 30 grads a year, right? Which will be a very small percentage of what you guys do. But 44 grand working in Iceland, that's awesome. That's where I wish I'd have started. But so I don't know. I guess I could.
Still go about
I'm
that.
sure I'll get finished at some point. I'll have to. But I guess the thing is, it's like if it feels quite structural, and we're going to move on to the positive bit, but it does feel quite structural, and it feels like the bringing in people at the bottom is going to take a long time, and then we have a supply issue at the top. So, Darren, will you just sort it all out for us? Is that why you're here? Like
slowly, we are doing that. I mean, look, we hold ourselves accountable, and you know, when we started, as I said, we really championed it to the point where we will talk to clients about what they can expect to see on a long list and a short list. And, you know, I'm proud to say that we're somewhere between 25 and 30% of our senior hires come from non-white minorities, which is, you know, really important to us. And I know last time we went in to see a big broadcaster actually, and they said, well, I know you said 25 to 30%, that's your long list, right? That's not, no, we're like, no, that's the placements. So I think having the information is the most important thing, because once you've got the information, you know what to do with it. And we present you know, pretty much every month to our team how we're doing against that, and we'll hold ourselves accountable, and that's the only way you can drive it forward.
We also arrogantly assume that our industry is an aspirational job, right? And when you speak to a lot of people, in our community, they don't give a fuck about. It's like, I'm going to work in advertising. Who says that? No one wants to.
The crazy thing is now,
so that's an issue as well.
And we had a load of kids in the other day, and they're going, "Oh, I'm going to be a footballer, and I'm going to be," and I love. I'm
going to be a creator or an influencer.
But I love it because you don't want to ruin their shine and all of that, but also you kind of want to go. I don't know, it's hard, isn't it? But how do we make our industry a bit more exciting, I suppose? That's a topic for another panel, maybe. But so I'm very good at presiding over a pity party, right? So let's talk a bit about what people can do, what we can do, what's tangibility things. That's not real language. What can we do to make a difference, but from an individual perspective? So I want to start off just by asking if anyone wants to talk about sponsorship, because I find sponsorship remarkable in terms of everyone goes, get a mentor. I'm like, sponsorship can be really transformational. So who does that in an organisation? Who can talk to that? Everyone.
We've got a sponsorship programme. I think we put it in place 2021, I think. And, you know, we really ensured that the people that were being the sponsors knew that it's mentorship with action, and you need to advocate for the person that you're sponsoring. You need to open up doors, use your privilege to ensure that they get the same opportunities that all the informal sponsorship that has gone on for years in the industry is disrupted. And I think, you know, the aim was 18 months. I think we did it in 2020, actually. The aim was promotion, and I think we promoted probably about 75% of the people that were on the sponsorship programme. And some people struggled, some of the sponsors struggled with it more because they just felt, what am I supposed to be doing? Well, how can I do that? But it's, you know, you've just got to constantly remind people it's what comes naturally to you for people like you, and that's what's happened to you. You just need to extend that privilege to the person that you're sponsoring. So it's worked really well.
What's just really really hot. I mean, mentorship's easy because you marry someone up and then they have a chat and they may advocate for you or whatever, but they're there for you. But sponsorship is a really tight, close relationship, and you have to really trust the person you're advocating for and put them forward. So I always say mentors are great, but sponsors are amazing. The sponsors is how has defined my career for the last 18 years, right? I've had the same sponsor, thank God, for the last 18 years. So Blake Chandley, who, when I started at Facebook, 2007, I had an interview with him. He offered me the job after 15 minutes, and I worked with him for 10 years, right? And whenever I'm not in the room, he asked me to move to New York, and he said he wanted to know that day. And I had to ask my fiance, who's now my wife, if we could move to New York. And she said, if Blaze asked you to move to New York, I think we should move to New York, right? And I moved to Singapore and all that sort of stuff, because he was sponsoring advocates, because we had a very close professional relationship where he could trust me and I could trust him, and he'd ask me to do it. And then he rang me when I was at Instagram and said, do you want to work again? It's like, yeah, come over to do TikTok. What's the job? I don't know anything in that, so you figure it out. That's a sponsor. A sponsor is someone that you've got a really tight, deep relationship with, who's in a position of power, who advocates for you when you're not in the room, because they trust you to do that, rather than a mentor. So it's not easy to get a sponsor. You have to really work.
How do you find a Blake? Because there aren't many of them.
You know Blake, don't you? You know Blake really well, yeah. But I don't know, you just have to take advantage of when you're in a position to work with someone who's senior or someone who is leading a project or a program that you just, I don't know, you show value, and you continue to do and show value, and then there's a mutually beneficial relationship there, because you can't expect someone to be a sponsor for you just because they like you. A sponsor is about, they know that you're going to add value to something they're going to put you in the position of. And that's really, really, it's hard to achieve.
And we have forced it, so we've sort of put a programme in place, and we've, you know, found people that are hypos, we focused on ethnicity and we put them in partnership with somebody who did have power and who was senior enough to advocate for them. But some of the sponsors have really struggled. Because it does rely on that relationship. So, yeah.
But if you can find a sponsor rather than the mentor, find a sponsor. And mentor's good, right? It's great. But then people say, oh, can I get introduced to your network? And I'm like, what are you going to do with that? What are you going to say? And they may give you advice, and that's great. I'm not saying it's not good, but a sponsor is a whole nother level. That's how you progress.
I think also it's good for the sponsee to really push as well. So kind of outline what they want as well, to take control of their careers and kind of really encourage the sponsors to, you know, help them get there. I think it's a two-way relationship.
Yes, absolutely.
I think I think you kind of look at, I don't know, I'm speaking on my own behalf, but you look at the teams you've got and the roles you're trying to recruit people to, and I think if there are individuals that are there that you like, actually, somebody made a point about equity. I think everyone's talked about equity in various forms. Like, if you can give them an equitable platform that they've not had for their 7-8 years of their career, some at 7 Stars, some everywhere else. That's kind of where I feel like you can be that aggressive sponsor in a room where you're talking about that. What some people were asking me a question before the panel, and one of the questions was, what happens if you're an individual and you're feeling like you're being passed over, or you're feeling like you bang your head up against a brick wall? And nobody said this to me, but they feel like, well, that person, I've done X or I've done Y, and it could get really reductive if you then start comparing yourself. So what would has anyone got any good advice for people if there is a world where they're like, just don't seem to be getting pushed up to the next level, and I don't get it because person over there? Don't know if anyone wants to talk to that.
I think it's really important to kind of always outline what you've done, back it with data, and kind of show your value, like on paper sometimes. I think sometimes just getting something down in terms of paper, and when you really reflect in terms of what you've achieved, it's probably loads of stuff, and then call it out. You have that on paper, share it with your manager, and if it's not going anywhere, then I think everyone has to speak up as well. We all have to feel uncomfortable at times, but it's really important, I think, for everyone to start calling issues out, but also just make sure you have that proof point that you're doing something and delivering it.
But I would say also ask for feedback all the way through your career. Always ask for feedback and learn to sort of take it as a gift.
Yes.
Because if you're getting feedback all the time, you know where you are in your career, and there won't be any misconceptions. Now, that's not to say that you won't still be passed over, but then you've already got the data. And I find a lot, people will come and say, why was so-and-so promoted and I wasn't promoted? And often there will be actually a real reason based on performance, but no one's talked to that person about their performance. And so I feel like, for me, it's always, feedback's a gift, and sometimes it's hard to take, but you've got to take it because that's what helps you grow.
Yeah, I think, I totally agree on the feedback point. And sometimes it's really hard to
receive
the feedback. But actually, I think you've got to realise in terms of kind of how that makes you grow. So just always kind of turn on, like, what's the positive from this? What am I going to do? And how am I going to take control of this to change that opinion? I think it's so important.
I think also, just signalling that you are ambitious. Because I know it's a really small thing, but if you don't go to your boss and say, I really want the next stage, and tell me what I can do to get there, then at least you've framed it, and so no one's going to be surprised, if you leave, because guess what, you haven't been promoted and someone else has offered it to you. So I think just flagging it and telling people is where I want to get to.
That feedback thing's really interesting, because I think two things. I think people are fearful of giving feedback. I think even the very best managers are like, how do I sugarcoat this? You hear the feedback savage, like, people aren't confident at giving that. So you're right, you do have to, as an employer, as an individual, have to kind of allow that in and welcome it. And then the flip side is people don't often like getting feedback, but as soon as you get into that feedback loop and people say it from the very start, look, I want to grow here, I want to get from here to here, help me, I want to know what I'm not doing good, I'm not doing well. I think that's great.
That's what I mean. It's a challenge when people aren't having one-to-ones regularly enough, because then it builds up, and then the feedback is harsh. Whereas if you're making your manager accountable for regular one-to-ones where you are actively talking about your development and what you need to be doing, and you have OKRs, or you have your plans for your next review and that sort of stuff, and you're actively managing those things, then you shouldn't get to the point of the review and you don't know why you've been passed up. You should already know by the time you've got there. But I just think people are very bad at utilising one-to-ones for their own personal development. They want to say, this is what I've done, great, keep on. But you need to be asking, okay, what is it you expect of me? What are there other things that I can be doing? What's the feedback that you've heard? All that sort of stuff. And that has to be on a regular basis. The one-to-ones are so, particularly in the business like ours, which changes all the time, you need to have regular one-to-ones because there's just things that happen that you need to be abreast of for your own personal development.
I think that's, everyone will roll their eyes who love working at home, but I think that's some of the stuff that we've lost with this kind of hybrid working or not wanting to come into the office. I think they're the things that make a difference. The coaching, the hearing your boss say X, Y, Z, or hearing your colleagues say that. And for me, I'm really fearful of some of those things that are intangible that we're not really getting anymore. Well, some of us aren't getting because we're not really back to working together in that way yet.
Yeah. I agree. Because you feel quite isolated sometimes when you work at home. I think it's, just that's...
You can't get connection through a screen either, can you?
Exactly.
I mean, it's bullshit. Separate to work. So, everyone knows where we stand on it. We've got to go to 4 days.
We work in here. I just sometimes when I come in the office, I just walk. I block like 2 hours out at lunchtime. I just walk. We've got 3 floors,
Invisible,
and I just walk because you just get pulled into stuff and you just have conversations, these serendipitous moments and spontaneity. We're in the office for 3 days a week, and people are probably in for 2. But those 2 days and that middle moment is just incredible.
Yeah.
I do think it's hybrid is great, right? But I do also think you need to be, particularly in our industry, you need to have the serendipity, the connectivity in order to do that. And when you're in a senior position, you also need to be seen as much as those folks. You need to understand the business. So,
but the hybrid thing can create a whole different level of inequity, because if you've got people in the office and they're having more exposure to senior people and more chance to learn and more sort of time together, and then if you've got people that are more at home, there's almost like a belonging tax that's coming into play.
And that is tough, because some of the people are going like, it's going to cost me X, Y, Z to get into work, and I can't afford it. And then you're like, so then you start to reward, because you tend to start rewarding the people, asking the people to go to pitches that are there and are visible. And I'm not sure how else you make that judgment call, because if you're not seeing them, you're not. It's another sticky one.
It's not that sticky. You set the requirements for your job, right? This is what we expect, and unfortunately, there's the time that was before, and if you want to live at that time, COVID, then you find another job. It's very harsh, I know, but the culture of the company is hybrid. You're in the office 3 days a week. You're at home 2 days a week, and if that doesn't adhere to how you want to be successful, then you have to move on. And those are the discussions and decisions that you have to make, right? If that company is not giving you the remote that you want, that's not the company for you. But it's the thing that we need in order to ensure that we are having the right culture and absorbing the right people, or observing the right people for their success.
Look, everyone who knows me knows I couldn't agree more, and it's like,
it's a hard thing. No one ever says it.
Pull the
right?
Band-Aid
It's
off.
a hard thing to say, but
I agree.
It's reality.
Okay, so I said we'd leave time for some questions.
Well, you touched me just then.
It's meant to be driving connectivity. I just feel a bit low. So
Just keep answering.
I think you're going to be our mic person. And let's take advantage. We're coming to you last, Darren. No, not really. Who would like? We've got Nena. We've got Naren. Which way? You choose.
Ladies first.
I'm going closer.
Oh, okay.
Is that okay?
Okay, I have a little bit of a tricky question.
We like them.
I'm not sure whether there's an answer
She's
to
looking
it.
at you, Sharon.
I know.
I'm like,
Set you up.
You have spoken from the viewpoint of the companies, but is there any sort of any sort of hacks, or is there any sort of ways that we, as someone going into a company, can find out if a company is diverse before we actually go in? So the reason I ask that is because I'm at a very big tech company. Is this being recorded for?
Don't say it.
yeah,
Okay.
don't worry.
Okay, very big tech, very big tech company. And when I had my interviews, I was interviewed by 2 black people, and as part of the interview package, they said, "Oh, these are all the ESG groups and everything else. I was like, great. And then, you know, at the bottom of the job post, they have, we are, you know, we're very passionate about D&I, blah, 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 blah. So imagine my surprise when I get into my team of 20 and I am the only black woman yet again, you know. So I did actually pull them up on it, and I said that what's happened here, and they're just like, you know, it's just, you just need to kind of get on with your job. So part of my disappointment is that, and it's actually quite a heavy disappointment because I actually feel deceived. I actually feel deceived because they said all the right things, but when it came down to it, it was once again,
It's a bit of show.
Nondescript. So is there anything that we can take as employees?
How were you hired? Was it an internal recruitment team?
No. Just I saw the job post on LinkedIn.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I mean, all I would say is, you know, we do a lot of that heavy lifting for client, because we will ask the questions that we know our clients are going to ask. So if the client briefs us, we will ask the questions, right, who are they working with? What does that team look like? So it's really important. I mean, you're spot on. You don't want any nasty surprises, but you know, I think it's important to have all those questions sort of lined up, depending on who's representing you.
I would ask, if it was me, if they're in the office, can I come in one lunchtime?
Oh, really?
Or can I meet the team
Yeah.
that I'm working with?
Yeah, I think it's good to meet the team, and you know, just kind of check it out a little bit before. Yeah, that's what I've done previously as well. So definitely meet the team.
Find someone else, you know, down there.
Yeah.
I'm sure you did, yeah.
I'd asked the two black people who interviewed me, I said, okay, be honest, because I appreciate the candor.
Yeah.
So how is it?
Find those people. Find those people in the morning going, what? Be honest, what does that mean?
And I said to them, how is it in terms of, not because I'm a quite senior level.
Yeah.
So in terms of people like me, skip managers, couple of skip managers, how is it? And they just told me they're trying, quote unquote, this is trying.
If you'd have asked them for their stats, if you'd have said, you know, what is the representation at my level, and they'd have said 2%, would you have not taken the job?
Probably, yeah, I won't lie. Because I've been in the industry for a long time, and then afterwards, it's just exhausting. Just
because
like
it's, you know, if there was the gender pay gap, you can see how it's split out by the quartiles, can't you, in terms of male versus female.
Yeah.
The ethnicity pay gap has now sort of gone into a black hole, I think, and is not even going to be happening.
No.
But that would be, you know, that's a data point. I mean, I think you can research the company and see if there's people, you know, in my position that are talking about the right kind of stuff and writing the right kind of articles, but that could be spin as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it is about going in and meeting the team. I would always want to meet the team if I was going for a job.
Cheers. Naren, I think we've got a question at the back there.
Yes,
And then we'll go to Naren. Hello.
Sorry. So I have a question around sponsorship, as you guys have discussed it. So my question is, where would you start to kind of find a sponsor? I think for mentorship, it's quite easy, let's say, to find a mentor because we can reach out to anyone. But you talked about having to prove yourself and basically show the right thing for the person to be able to sponsor you. So would you start by your organization, or would you start outside of that, and what would you do to prove yourself that you're the right person to sponsor?
Yeah, good question. Really good question. Who wants to?
You've got a sponsorship program, right?
I mean, ours is very intentional. So we have identified people who we want to be sponsored and then partnered them with a sponsor. So it's not about you finding a sponsor; it's about your company finding you one, and we've been really intentional around that.
How do you find the partnership?
So we just took all of our exco and said you have to be sponsors, and then we took all of our, not all of our, we identified a certain level of people that we wanted to fast track who were high potentials of black or Asian or mixed ethnicity, and partnered those with the exco, and it was the exco's role to sponsor those people. So it wasn't. It doesn't really answer your question because it's not about you finding somebody.
From my perspective, it's about networking, and it's almost like you're doing the print of your organisation and working out who do I like, who am I seeing from a leadership perspective, who I would aspire to be like, for example, or you've seen a value within them that resonates with you, and then it's about networking and taking them, going, you know, putting some time in their diary.
Yeah, the networking thing is also that for sure, but to curate the network, because if I think about, so I've got Blake as a sponsor, but there's another person who is one of my best friends, but I work with her, but she's also a sponsor, so she's the one that's put me forward for a couple of the roles that I've had, just in passing and giving my name to people. So there is that. But again, not everyone's going to have a sponsor. There's only a few people that are going to have sponsors. But yeah, I would say a planned some sort of program, working with a senior leader and being able to showcase your value to them, or curating your network and being able to show value to them, and so they can talk about you to other folks. Those are the sorts of things. But unfortunately, you can't sit down and write it and say, I'm going to do this. It's sort of just, as the opportunity comes, you sort of have to take advantage of it as opposed to plan it. Does that make sense?
I agree with that too, Joe. I definitely think in your catch-ups with your existing manager, it's almost like starting to not be afraid of mapping out where you want to go and what you want to do. And I think sometimes that's about just saying that one of the things I've heard that could be really powerful is this way of working, is sponsorship. Is that something that the business has discussed? Is it something that's out there? And I think at least if you start having those conversations, you're signalling to your boss that you're on a journey, you want to go somewhere as well. So I think starting to have those chats, and to be honest, I'm not sure where you work, and it doesn't really matter. They might not be in a place where they are doing that, or it's something they've looked at. So if nothing else, you might force them to go and look into it as something. And I think we have a bit of that responsibility to ask that question, and then hopefully you get them spin off and go and have a think about it, is what I'd say. But again, if you haven't got a MEFA mentor, I think it's something we push quite hard with our mentees and mentors. So probably try and get onto that scheme as well, and we can make sure we help you with that chat. Naren?
Yeah, just following up, I kind of agree with you. I think people look at people in C-suite and go, oh, they're too busy, they don't have time for me. But actually, having the courage to approach someone and go, could I have 20 minutes of your time for a coffee, right? I just want to talk to you. Can you help me with this? You'd be surprised. Not everyone's going to say yes, but given how rare it is that we ever get asked for that, you'd be surprised. Most people think, oh yeah, they must be asked all the time. Actually, no one asks us because they think we're too busy. And actually helping people is incredibly satisfying. We probably get more back than you get in terms of assisting. So I'd be brave, look at your network in your organization and reach out and ask people to talk to you. But my question for the three of you, given that Liam, Trevor and Sharon, given you're in what I call the 4% club, so if you looked at C-suite in advertising, 4% are Black, Asian and mixed. I just want you to give me, what's the one thing you think, if you look back at your career, that you did, that kind of got you to where you are? So Liam, I'll go with you first.
I was hoping you wouldn't start with me. Thanks, Naren. I guess I could do it. Thanks, so Trevor. I guess this is going to sound really flippant because I appreciate we're in slightly different times, but I think it's recognising when you are in a place where you can succeed and where you can be yourself. And doesn't matter where I was. So this is 15 years ago, so I don't mind talking about it. So when I was at Cara's an awesome place. I learnt a lot. There was a lot of stuff happening in my life at the time, but I went there. But what I realised was they wanted me to do an ABCD job, right? So they wanted me to do a job that was like, this is your job spec, this is what we need to deliver. And I was like, I'd come from clients, so I was like, I can go and do that, and I can do that. And that was nothing to do with colour, by the way. That was like, get back, this is what we want you to do. And I guess being dissatisfied with being in a place where you're not able to go and fulfill things that make you passionate, things that make you jump out of bed on top of your day job or alongside your day job, I think you have to be honest with yourself and go, is this the place for me? The reason why I say it's a flippant answer is because I understand we're in a slightly different world where it's harder to find great jobs and it's not always easy, and it's, economy is shit and cost of living. So I don't mean to say that flippantly, but I guess for me it's being able to recognise when you're not necessarily in a place where you can bring yourself and where you can be yourself. And I know that's not easy for someone who's feeling like that currently, but maybe can't make that leap and can't jump. So that's what mine would be. Sharon?
Yeah, really similar actually, just in terms of being comfortable in your own skin and actually, realising that, we all have our own strengths, and it's fine to be who you are, and we all have our superpowers, and let's use them. I think also for me, the changing point for me in my career is also thinking outside of my day job. Actually, what's the impact I want to have outside of you know, what I do day in, day out, and just going for it, and just thinking, actually, you know, it's what I want to do. This is the thing I want to change, and kind of showing, you know. So I developed like a program for parents coming back into work. Elaine knows all about it, and I remember thinking, this is what I want to do, and did it in a week, and then rolled it out across Group M. I think just sometimes having the courage to do something and just go for it is really important, and that for me was really career changing, because it gave me the confidence. It made me feel really confident in terms of who I am.
So interesting, not even part of your normal job.
No, yeah.
Just out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, totally out of the comfort zone.
Trevor, finishing with you tonight?
Is this the last thing?
Yeah, there's loads more chat to have around the bar.
What time's Snoop for you?
20, me and my brother in 25 minutes. I feel bad now.
So, career, I've never wanted a career. If you look at my CV, it's the most scattered CV you've ever seen. I've never looked at my boss and wanted their job. Right? I've never gone from a role where I've been promoted to my boss's job. We talk about career ladders, but we talk about jungle gyms, right? I was 12 years at Facebook. I probably had about 6 different roles. I moved jobs or moved countries to do and experience new things. It was always opportunities that came that I could either jump across to learn something new, or take on special projects or whatever, so outside your comfort zone. So, and that's that. As I said, the TikTok job I do now, there's nothing on my CV that suggests I'm qualified for that role, but it was an opportunity that came, and I took advantage of it. The PFA thing, it's a trade union, right? It's highly political. It's very slow moving. I've worked at Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. It's a complete opposite, right? It came as an opportunity. I took it, and it's completely different, and it could take me in another direction. So some people want to have a career, right? They want to have a career ladder, and they want to be planned, and they want to have this linear progress. I'm not interested in that. I'm happy with my job at this moment, but my next job will be completely different, and that's what has happened for the last 25 years. Just doing completely different things and taking jumps. If you're in a company, like a big company, then it's easier to do that, to take a jump sideways to go up. So thinking about a jungle gym rather than the career ladder, that's how I've done the last 20 years.
Cool. Now you've made me feel really bad. So shall we have one more question?
Sorry, this is just following your last point, talking about jungle gyms. So, like, how do you spot opportunities in that case of being like, oh, this is like a different role? How do you spot opportunities to be like, this is the time to jump from here to here, sort of thing?
So yeah, if there's an internal mobility program, be really keyed into that. If there are jobs that come up, speak to hiring managers, see what they're looking for. Maybe they're looking for experience in the company rather than direct experience in the role. Join the ERGs, because then you get experience elsewhere. Do stuff outside of your day job to increase your networks and your connections. So if things do come up, you can come in. If you've been in a job for a while, maybe there's some advisory stuff you can do in other teams or outside. It's just having the appetite to learn and hunt, and not be afraid to look at new experiences that aren't directly related to what you're doing, but could take you in a different place. It's just the appetite for learning and an experience, and just be hungry, I think.
And I think if you're in the agency world, ask to get involved in new business.
Yes. Yeah, totally agree. I think that gives you such a platform to go out and be visible and be seen. So,
sorry, just one question on the back of that. Would you say that our industry is quite open for people to kind of jungle jumping?
Jungle gym.
Jungle jump, yeah.
Yeah. I think some organisations are more open to it than others, but I don't think what most of us do, definitely not what I do, is rocket science, right? So I think there's quite a lot, that's definitely not what I do. There's quite a lot of lateral skills you can take from one organisation to another to creative, go and work as a creative planner. I don't think that's different from being a media planner. Personally, people can chuck stones at me. So I think it's quite easy to jump between, it's not quite easy. I think there is ample opportunity. You probably just need to do some of the stuff that the brilliant panel have talked about today to kind of get around it. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our awesome panel. Please stay around some food and drink and ask loads of questions. Naren was honest when he went, people don't ask us often, can you help, can we have a chat? So do more of that. And good luck and keep in touch. Thank you very much.